I mean, look, before you left to go to on the broadcast this weekend, last week we talked about how 100 Thieves were going to do, how Sentinels were going to do, how North America is going to, represent our region and our nation into the LCQ, into Worlds. And we're a couple days later, and now Crew is in the winners bracket final, and they are going to the LCQ. Can you believe that this happened?
I literally cannot believe this. Like,
they didn't win a game.
Yeah,
they didn't win a game, Sean, in the regular season.
It's unreal. Like, it is actually one of the most unreal things I think I've seen in all of esports. Like, I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around it, because even though they were 0-9, right? And they went 5-18 on maps, like 5 wins, 18 losses.
Not good.
It's not very good. Their round differential was somehow actually better than MIBR, who won 3 series. Like, that's actually kind of insane. Like, how is that even possible? Their round differential is actually like not so bad. It's only -53. And when you consider the fact that they lost 9 best of 3s, the fact that they only lost 53 more rounds than they won is quite telling as to like how close those games were.
They played a lot closer than what the record may have shown.
Yeah.
In the regular season.
Yeah, they played super close. Like, I don't think people give them enough credit for how well they played a lot of those series, right? I think people are quick to see just like the end result and not really like what went into, say, like, those games. And I was there like for a lot of those series, and they legitimately had chances to win almost all of them. And behind the scenes, I mean, the whole time you just have to be thinking like, man, these guys have to be so mentally defeated, right? They come all the way to a different country. They're living here. Once they were chilling at like 05, 06, they realized like they're not making playoffs. Like, they're just not, right? And that has to be a pretty bitter pill to swallow, especially when you have to chill in the US for another couple months, and then you have LCQ coming. And I think just like how like EDG and EG, like once they got that like taste of success and they had confidence and buy-in in themselves as players, holy cow, like the turnaround has been so fast. It's been unreal to watch how they've progressed from series to series. And because I wasn't believing. I mean, like, I think you and I may have talked about this like privately, but when they beat MIBR, I kind of dismissed it. I was like, MIBR, they're playing with their assistant coach. And even though that guy knifed 100 Thieves out of their dreams and hopes, like, that's still their assistant coach playing that game. And then they played Furia, and I was like, I'm not going to lie, I still think like DG is going to pop off here. I still think MW0 is going to pop off. Khalil is incredible. I mean, but they still, like, after they won that series, I was like, man, well, that was like a miracle. That bind game, did you see that? Do you see that,
They
Rod?
were down 11-7 on that bind game, and Furia had 6 straight chances to send that to OT and to win that series, and Crew was so resilient in that comeback. It really was super impressive.
It was insane. Yeah, like you said, it was 11-7, and they won 6 straight rounds to steal map 3, 13, 11. That was the single elimination portion of the bracket too. So it would have been over. But even after that win, I still dismissed it. I still said like, okay, well, Quick wasn't playing for Furia, wasn't their full lineup. Conan was subbing in, and even though he looked pretty legit on the Sova, like, I still question like how legitimate that win was at the time. So going into like that Leviathan game, I was like hearing a lot of whispers behind the scene about how insane Leviathan is in practice, and that they're back. Like, all of the pro players were telling me like, this Leviathan team is for real. I was hearing a lot, like almost everyone I was talking to in LCQ was fearing Leviathan. And I was like, there's just no way they get by them. There's no way. There's just no way. And for them to come out and 13-5, 13-7 them, like, at that point I was a believer. Like, did you believe at that point, Rod?
I mean, yes, but even you that were on that couch, once Cloud9 won map one, like, all right, this series is over. They're going to go to their home map, Pearl. Don't worry. We got a quick 2-0. We get to see America in the grand final of the LCQ. No. Turn around, almost a 13-0. DGZ almost goes, perfect without a death in the entire map, and they bring it around. I mean, you were there. So even you're talking about, like,
you mean Nags. You mean Nags.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Nags. Like, was I a believer after the Leviathan game? You were the one on the couch saying, all right, Cloud9's going to win this 2-0. How was Crew able to even come back against Cloud9 in that series to get them to the grand final?
I don't understand what happened. Like, I'm flashing back to Ascent. They lost 13-4 on their map pick of Ascent, having been up 2-0. Like, to say that that's not a blowout would be insane. And then going into Pearl, a map that they were like 1-2 or like 1-3 on in VCT Americas, to go 12-0 on their opening half against the best defensive team on Pearl in our region, I don't know. It was just an all-around diffing. Like you said, Nags didn't have a death, I think, until like round 11.
Yeah.
It was like a masterclass of like how to play Pearl. Every single thing that they did was working. I'm looking at their first bloods right now. Nags 1-0, Davies 1-0, Melser 1-0, Klaus 4-0, Kesnet 3-2. Like, the rounds were just blowouts. Like, you add up Cloud9's frags and it's like, what is it? 13, 16, 19, 21 kills total in 12 rounds, dude. Like, what? This was like one of the most insane performances I think I've ever seen in the scenario they were in. Like, down 0-1 going into your opponent's map pick. This opponent lost 4 maps in an entire season. Like, an entire season, they were 17-4. Like, what?
Is there anything that you can pinpoint that you saw either in person or seeing the first 2 games of MIBR and Furia? I feel like you have to give the coaching staff a ton of credit. I remember in the post-game interview after Cloud9, they said they worked really hard on anti-stratting in the Cloud9 series and the Leviathan series, and they really knew what Cloud9's tendencies were and what they like to go for, and they spent a lot of time, prepping and practicing for that. So I do feel like the IGLing and the coaching staff does deserve a lot of credit. Is there any like 1 or 2 things that you feel like that really was able to let Crew make this incredible run through the LCQ that we both never predicted? I mean, yeah, last week I was like, hey, maybe Crew will win as a throwaway joke. Like, that is going to be impossible. And look where we are now.
Yeah, there's a couple ways that I kind of want to address this. One, I want to give crazy credit to Crew. I think the changes I've seen in like how they approach the game strategically and just their confidence across the board is incredible. And every single series that they played, you've seen like this progression, right? Like, as they play, they win in new ways. Like, at first it was the Kesnet show, and then when they went against Leviathan, while Kesnet did have a very good game, I actually thought like the supporting cast within the team played really, really good as well. But then this Cloud9 series happened, and it was everyone but Kesnet. It was actually like Nags popping off. It was Davies closing out with that insane 1-on-2 on Haven. It was Melser just 24/7, like on these controller agents having immense impact. And Klaus, like every time this guy just has like a map, he takes over. And that Haven map was unreal. He had 3 Seekers in the first,
yeah,
I think, like
almost had 4.
9 rounds or something. Like 9-10 rounds, he popped Seekers 3 times. And it should have been more of a blowout than it was. The opening pistol, Leaf stuck a 1-on-3 defuse. Like, man, 13-6. And they won both pistols. Like, I'm not taking anything away from this team. But are you ready, Rod?
Oh, give me the spice.
Okay.
Give me the spice.
So, I've heard a couple birdies tell me that after playoffs, Cloud9 played a lot of scrims without Rooney and with Cupert. And I think they ended up going back to Rooney. But I think doing something like that, I think really affects the mental of a team. And I don't know the reasonings why.
Yeah, do you have any insight into why they were trying that out?
I have like light insight, but not enough to really like kind of say on the record. But I do know that they did get scrims in with Cupert, and even if you listen to the post game interview with the crew players, they mention the fact that like, oh, we know like like how Cloud9 plays this map, and they talk about Harbor. They talk about Harbor, and then he says like, oh, actually it's like the same thing when they run like Viper Omen instead of like the Harbor comp. So they obviously have scrimmed crew a lot, and that's why MC has given them credit. Like behind the scenes, MC has basically said like they were a very good scrim partner, and we respect the fuck out of them, and they think they're really good. So in addition to like kind of like some in-house problems from Cloud9, maybe understanding how they play on the crew from like crew's perspective helped them a lot in this series. And I think even though they lost Ascent, they were still very confident. And I think it was a pretty big mistake from Cloud9 to give them an open map like Pearl, where there wasn't the ability to do like trap plays and like all kind of like quirky util stuff. Because Pearl is a map where like it's too spread out. Like if you do that kind of stuff somewhere, there's a huge hole that the other team could just mid round to. And they know that, right? Like, so that's why crew's in such ridiculous mechanical form right now. They're riding a ridiculous high. And even after Ascent, where they got like trap played to death by like Omen Viper, they still were riding that high. And then going into Haven, they were the ones with like the quirky comp and like the weird stuff going on. And Cloud9 tried to do it with the Viper Omen, but I thought like the way that Klaus played on Sky and like honestly just Davies lurks continue to just be so good. They can do no wrong. They can do no wrong. But what do you think about the whole like Cloud9 thing?
I think it's very risky to do going into your last chance of qualifying for the year. I mean, it also would make sense in some ways. This is your last chance. There's not going to be a whole lot to play for after. We don't know quite what the offseason tournament schedule is going to be like, so maybe try something here or there. But it seems like, like Cloud9 was actually playing really well with Rooney. Like, of all the NA teams, we go back last week when I asked you, so do you actually think the Sentinels or Hunter Thieves are going to qualify in the NA teams? And we were both like, well, probably not, honestly. Cloud9 does look like the most consistent, structured team at the moment, especially with, MCE. With the coach, really getting them together. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, honestly. Like, I could understand them wanting to do a couple of different things as this is their last chance, but if you know that and you're still playing pretty well, why mess it up? Or why potentially mess up the chemistry that you have between the players? Because obviously doing something like that hurts the confidence of Rooney, or potentially would hurt his confidence about how he's going to play. It might make him maybe more motivated to like keep his spot, or to try to prove himself further. But I feel like a lot of times it could have the opposite effect. And you're also losing out on practice time as the group of five in the first place, which, obviously can have a few issues. So I feel like it's honestly a questionable move. Out of like all the teams that could potentially do something like that, I think Cloud9 trying it makes the least amount of sense from like an outside perspective.
It's hard to say, honestly. Like,
we really don't know the insides. And I will say this about Cloud9. When they dropped Ye and when they dropped Vanity, most people in the community were like, what are you guys doing? You guys are insane. You can't afford Ye. That's why you're dropping him. You're poor. Jack, you're broke. You may as well give up now. And then you go into the season, and they were the best team of all the North American teams. Maybe them and NRG were the best teams. Well, I mean, EG had their, like, insane run at the end, but I think most consistent, you would probably pick Cloud9 or NRG as the two teams. So they did prove everybody wrong once with some changes that for a lot of people didn't make a lot of sense. So I think you have to give them a little bit of leeway for kind of trying things out. But I still feel like in this situation, it doesn't make a lot of sense comparative to other teams that could do the same thing.
I don't want to speculate on like that whole part. Honestly, it might make sense. Like having coached a team, like Cuper's like a really good player actually. So like, and he's capable of IGLing. So I understand if there was something that happened behind the scenes, like doing that. My concern is like going back. Like going back is the concern, right? Like it's like kind of like, you know, like ending some kind of like friendship or relationship or some kind of reason. Like you have to have some kind of reason for that. And then going back into it, it's like you're going to be in a rocky situation. Like it's going to require a little bit of like, you know, rough times probably to get through if you even are. And it's before LCQ where there's like no wiggle room for any mistakes. It might not be the right time for something like that. That's the weird part is like if they did play with Cooper and if they did think that that was the play, I think they should have just kept with it. Because I guarantee you once they were down like 8-0 on Pearl, there was one player on that team that was thinking like, maybe this doesn't happen with Cooper. You know, like, and that is a fucking toxic thought. Like once that little piece of toxicity enters the team's like mindset, it's very hard to recover, right? Like you can't have something like that. You can't have like that what if thought. And I just, that would be my concern. And it's more of like the mental. I don't know.
Yeah.
I try, because it is mainly MCE's project. Like he's the one that's like doing all the playbooks and like the game plans and the prep. And honestly, you could probably slot in anyone, but it's once you go back and forth that I think is the problem.
I agree. I mean, EG has been the one exception of having a lot of players on their roster and interscrimming and kind of switching players in and out. But for the most part, and traditionally, historically, over Counter-Strike and Valorant, you really can't have a sub. I mean, look at all the issues that Vision Strikers and DRX have had, you know, trying to move players in and out or not moving players in and out and having them in like contract hell and never letting them play, whether it was like Lakia or Foxy, and usually doesn't seem to work out so well. Okay, they have their final match versus Leviathan to get into the grand final against Crew to get their stuff together. So I got to imagine there's no way we see Cupert play in that match.
No, I don't think so. I think like once you commit to it, like for the start of the event, like you have to ride it through. Like you can't just keep like flopping back and forth, right? That's like the DRX playbook, and I really don't like that.
I
don't like that at all. Like I think they officially decided on playing with Rooney for LCQ, so they should continue through with it. And I still, I don't know, maybe I'm stupid and have like NA bias, but I still have a lot of faith in them. They've proven to me like they're a very strategic team. That Ascent game was very impressive. I think they're a team that can learn very, very quickly from their mistakes because of someone like MCE. And I think these losses, there's a lot they can learn from. And they're also a team that when they have footage of other teams, they're significantly better, which is something I mentioned on the desk. I'm like, that was my cope factor for Crew going into map 2 and 3 is they have no footage on these two maps. And that's why it was weird that Cloud9 allowed those two, because, you know, like they could have went to a map that they'd seen Crew play. And I feel like I trust MCE to create a game plan to like beat down a team with that footage. especially with like 1 day prep, right? Like crew can't change a lot of stuff between days. I think from here on out, it's like MC's domain. He probably has footage across like all the maps. And I favor them against Leviathan. I think it's going to be hard, but I'll favor them. And then the crew series. That's like, I can't believe I'm going to fucking say it, but I have to favor crew. They have 2 bans. What? How are we in this world?
I do not know. I kind of, they do have definitely the map draft advantage going into the final. But I think whoever they end up playing, whether it's Cloud9 or Leviathan, I think from like the outside, you probably say either team, considering the regular season, definitely has the upper hand. But considering how the playoffs have been in the LCQ, you've got to feel like crew just going up in a normal draft definitely have a 50-50 shot. And with the map draft advantage, they gotta have the favorable odds. They have to. I can't believe we're in this situation where crew, it could be the team going to Worlds, to Champions, over everybody else.